Hello, and welcome to this conversation hosted by Argo, titled All Things Shorts. Today, we're going to have a casual and hopefully informative conversation about the short film landscape today. This gathering of esteemed guests are all working within the realm of short films, and we're going to get into those direct connections shortly. But they all have very extensive backgrounds and experience in the film industry as filmmakers, producers, funders, and programmers. So I'm very excited that they're all joining me today for this conversation. Before we get started, I would like to thank XRM and also the Sundance Film Festival. So let's just kind of dive right in. Let's first begin by introducing ourselves with our pronouns, where you are joining us from, and the organization that you are with. And then I would also love if you could briefly describe what you do within the short film space with these organizations and perhaps elsewhere, because I had mentioned kind of all of your varied backgrounds. So I'll go ahead and kick us off and then I'll pass it along. So my name is Amanda Salazar. My pronouns are she and her. I am joining you from where I live on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Ohlone, Ramaytush, and Muwekma people, which is known as San Francisco. I am the head of programming and acquisitions at Argo, a short film streaming platform, and I will be moderating today's conversation. I would like to pass it perhaps to Charlie.
Cool. So I'm Charlie Phillips. I am head of video at The Guardian. I'm calling in from Folkestone, which is on the south coast of England, about an hour from London. My pronouns are he, him. And I commission shorts for The Guardian's website. We do like about 20 films a year, and we get tons of people bringing us really awesome ideas. And we just want to bring really good factual shorts to the world. That's our mission.
Fantastic. Thank you, Charlie. Merrill.
Hi, I'm Merrill Sterritt, co-director of If Then Shorts. I use any pronouns. I'm calling in from the unceded lands of the Munsee, Lenape, and Canarsie peoples, aka Brooklyn, New York. What does our program do? Was that the last part of it?
Yeah, in shorts, what you're doing over there.
Yeah, so we fund documentary shorts and advocate for our filmmakers in the field, and work with our filmmakers to both produce their shorts and kind of get them out to the communities and platforms that they want to be on.
Fantastic. Lamonia, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Lamonia Brown. My pronouns are she, her. I'm calling in also from Brooklyn, the Munsee and Lenape land. Of course, I'm on the other side from there because I'm in Williamsburg, and that land is really over in what's known as Canarsie. And then I work at WarnerMedia 150. WarnerMedia 150 is a brand within the WarnerMedia company. And what we do is we give funding and grants to artists and producers and writers and directors in the pre-development phase of their project. That helps them get their pitch materials together. And then we're able to take it throughout the company to various development executives, programmers, people who greenlight projects. This is very helpful for folks who don't have a manager or an agent or a lawyer to bring their project, and it gets them into the WarnerMedia family with that in a non-traditional way. We're always looking to amplify and elevate that content with the funds from 150. WarnerMedia as a whole, I also work on the film festival side. And we sponsor a few of the short film competitions. And a lot of our 150 content comes in as short films. In addition, WarnerMedia 150 does acquisitions in partnership with HBO Max. And we've actually acquired, I want to say, at least about 5 to 10 short films that will premiere on HBO Max. So was there another question?
No, but that's a lot of stuff. Oh. I'm so excited to talk more about. So Adam, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, hi, everyone. My name is Adam Piron. My pronouns are he, him. I'm calling in from Riverside, California, which is Tongva and Cahuilla territory. I have a number of different things I do with shorts, but I think for the sake of this call, I am on the short film programming team for the Sundance Film Festival. Every year our submissions go up. I want to say there's about a team of, it usually changes based on the year, but I think we have around 8 people on the team. But this year we got a little over 10,300 shorts. And so that's sort of divided between all of us in terms of doing first watches. And we narrow it down to the selection that you see for the festival this year. So yeah, we're constantly watching shorts for the better half of a year, and yeah, happy to be here and to talk with everyone. So
fantastic. And Opal, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yes, good evening. I'm Opal H.Bennett. My pronouns are she, her. I am co-producer and shorts producer at POV. I'm calling in from Grayson, Georgia, which is the land of the Cherokee, Muskogee, and Creek. And at POV, so we have been the longest running documentary series on public television. We will be starting our 35th season this summer, and POV Shorts is into its 5th season this summer. And so I've been working, initially I came on as shorts producer to acquire shorts for the short series. We do between 6 and 8 episodes, 13 to 15 shorts each season. And then I was promoted to co-producer, so also working on the feature side of things. But for these purposes, we are purely acquisitions, though I do have designs on hopefully doing some co-production on the short form side, but not there yet.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for introducing yourselves. I would just want to reiterate, this is more to be like a dinner conversation than a Q&A. So I would encourage you all to kind of chime in what each other are saying, and I'll just make sure that we stay on time and pass along some questions. So I do want to start at the beginning, given all of these kind of backgrounds where you each are working within the short form. There's, like I said, funding, but there's also support given to filmmakers. And so that's kind of the broad topic I think I'd like to start with, which is, filmmakers' needs and desires, obviously, but many of them need and want funding, but there are many ways in which we support short work. So I want to talk about kind of what you have seen to be the most impactful amount of support over time, given your experience. So it again is a very broad question, and I'm curious where anyone wants to start. This could include financing, like how much you do finance a film, if you do finance, go in with money, and if you work with other partners in that financing structure, or like again how you work closely with filmmakers in the festival track, or when you do acquire a film. Opal, just kind of showing that it can kind of really go many different ways, and maybe perhaps which inspires you the most to perhaps start. Does someone want to kick us off?
Well, POV has a built-in impact wing, which is quite unique, across our feature and shorts work, but particularly unique, I think, on the short side of things. So we've begun giving that treatment to a selection of our POV shorts in a given season, and that includes community screenings, that includes educational materials like a discussion guide. And so we did that for about 5 of the shorts from this season. And, one of them was a short made by 2 professors, Aguilas, by Maite and Christy. And, it was really amazing to see them addressing the issues and topics in the film in this different iteration, and being able to have that as a document for viewers and audiences of the film to go in deep into the issues of immigration and volunteering at the border. And yeah, I had an exchange with them where we all got a little emotional, to be honest, because it's not something that you normally see with a documentary, much less a short film. And them coming to it as educators, were able to kind of flex different muscles and how they were sharing about that story. So yeah, I would say the impact work that we're able to, or impact angles that we're able to lend to our short films has probably been something that I'm most proud of, but also lending significant impact.
Yeah. I think Merrill and Charlie, your work definitely also goes into that realm of doing a little more than perhaps funding. And I'm curious if you could each talk about that as well.
Yeah, I can go first. So at If Then Films, we're typically funding short documentaries up to $25,000, depending on what the program is that they're coming in through. But what's been really great is that because we are working under the roof of both Field Division and First Look Institute, we have a lot of access to a lot of other resources that we can provide to our filmmakers. We have legal advice. We have a post supervisor who gave a very hands-on workshop last week with some of our filmmakers. We're trying to kind of feel out in a cohort of filmmakers, for example, sort of like what their experience is and how we can set them up for success in a sustainable way. And so who can we expose them to, who can we put them in touch with? So obviously funding is important and necessary, but how can we use our networks and these other organizations that we have relationships with to get those filmmakers those additional resources?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that it's quite similar with us. Like, we have some money, but we're never going to have a ton of money for each of our films. But what we do is we'll try and come in quite early to a film. So we'll help with the creative development, we'll help across production. You know, I think all of our involvement in all the films we work with makes them better. And often the filmmakers we're working with are kind of, you know, they're small teams. It'll be a director and a producer. Sometimes it's just one person. And I think they really benefit from our kind of expert support as like someone to talk to and someone to like come with other creative ideas. So I think we make stuff better. And then, yeah, just as Merrill was saying, like we're in an organization that has really amazing lawyers and has journalists who are working all across the world. So that kind of additional support is really invaluable, I think. And then, of course, there's the exposure on the Guardian website, which is one of the most visited websites in the world. And I think being seen in that context is really good for numbers, but I think it's also really good for credibility. Like, it's up there with the best journalism in the world. And like the feedback we've always got from filmmakers is that they really love kind of being seen in such a respected context. So yeah, I think there's lots of stuff across the whole process we offer, like right up to helping to like get the films into festivals and like do awards runs and that kind of thing as well.
Yeah. Well, that terminology that you used around credibility, I'm actually then curious of throwing this over to Adam about like working at Sundance and it being one of the most major, you know, market festivals, definitely in the US and around the world, definitely well known and about to happen. And I'm just curious, as a programmer, kind of how you work with filmmakers too on like, they've gotten into this very esteemed, prestigious festival and kind of what other perhaps support or kind of like working with them long term to have them have the most impact as well.
Yeah, I think it's I think, you know, obviously outside of kind of just like the platform of the festival itself, I think you know, I think one of the things that we sort of do that maybe is a bit more like on the back end, especially like if there are shorts that are being approached to be acquired and things like that, you know, we're definitely able to offer them, you know, some advice on, you know, just based off of our own experience or what we kind of know, what's sort of like, you know, the market rate or some of that sort of stuff that's out there for them. Because I think, you know, people acquiring shorts it's not a new thing, but it's becoming increasingly more common. So I think, you know, and I think also too, I think a lot of people that make shorts don't necessarily think of it being something being acquired, you know what I mean? And so I think it's, you know, it's sort of a newer territory for a lot of folks, especially people making shorts when, you know, it's some of their more early work in general. But I think outside of that as well too, you know, I mean, one thing in particular that I know Mike does, who's the head of the shorts program, is he does our Sundance shorts tour every year. So that'll like definitely kind of highlight, you know, some of the shorts from the festival that year, and you know, they play theatrically back before COVID. I mean, hopefully it goes back to that, as well as virtually too. They screen at a number of different art houses or, you know, museums or places that reach out to us to do that. In one of my other roles within the Indigenous program at Sundance too, we also have an Indigenous shorts program. That same thing does, we do kind of like a tour, you know, usually during the summer, where it'll be, this last year we did it in a number of different community and cultural centers, and then also some art house theaters. And and venues and things like that. But, you know, I think, and even outside of that too, you know, I mean, I mentioned kind of the amount of submissions that we get, and, you know, within our own sort of process and of deliberations of, you know, trying to figure out and to curate what ends up playing in the festival and how, you know, different programs get structured. You know, there are always films that don't make it in and stuff as well too. But I think, you know, we're more than happy, and we usually do, you know, we'll reach out to those filmmakers that you know, maybe didn't make the final cut, but, you know, we're also, which is another thing that we also do too, is you know, we'll definitely let other filmmakers, or sorry, other like film festivals or programmers that we know at other festivals about these films, because like they're also films that we are very passionate about. And it's just, you know, it's the way I always describe, you know, making programs at Sundance is that it's a bit like making a mixtape and solving a Rubik's Cube at the same time. Like you're looking at both time, mood, different genre and things like that. And so there's always stuff that is like, you know, also really good that just ends up not making it in, but that also doesn't mean that we're not passionate about that, or we're not passionate about like having audiences see those films as well too. So that's, I think, one other thing that we do as well too. And also just keeping in touch with a lot of these filmmakers as well too. You know, sometimes if, you know, their short doesn't make it in one year, we still know about them, we still keep in touch with them, or they'll email us, and that's another way that we sort of track their work and stuff. So so yeah, so, you know, it goes beyond obviously within our program in and of itself, because it's more curatorial, it's less around like grants or even acquisitions to a certain extent, but it's like within sort of the landscape of programming within the festival world. That's like kind of, I think, how we support shorts and stuff outside of just our platform itself. So
yeah, I want to put a pin in that, like kind of the tracking and working with the same filmmakers or championing their longer careers in a second. So I like how you said that too. But Lamonia, I'd love to hear from you before we kind of move on from this again about you kind of, I think, got into it with your introduction, which sounds like full-fledged like support of a film and filmmaker. But is there anything else you'd really like to add in terms of kind of that space and kind of the long-term impact you have with the makers that you bring into your program?
Absolutely. To Adam's point, I can give you an example of a filmmaker that was in one of the competitions we sponsor at the American Black Film Festival. He had a short, made it into that competition, and everyone, in case you don't know, who gets into that competition, they generally also will be able to premiere their short on the HBO platform, HBO Max platform. So that's a great benefit to them, because so many more people get eyes on their short without them having to do more of the festival circuit in that way. But this particular short, we kept in touch. We keep in touch with all the filmmakers, but he expressed a desire to turn his short into a feature-length film. However, he'd never written a feature previously. So one of the things that we do at WarnerMedia 150, is we do partner with other organizations. So we partnered him with a writer's lab, and he's just turning in his third draft of his feature. It's going really well. It's going to be a really nice extension of the short. And so that's one of the ways that we supported him with a grant and with partnership and with some of our organizations. We support about 200 arts and cultural organizations from which we source a lot of our artists. Some of the other things that we do with shorts is we'll also help them, you know, if they do get the Oscar nomination. We have one that got nominated last year, and we did a whole press campaign around it, and we've acquired 2 this year that are on the short list for Oscar nomination, and we're going to do a whole campaign around them too. So we do create a content strategy around any of this content that comes in, and that's also very helpful, because, you know, that can be very costly to independent filmmakers to hire a company to do all that for them. So that's one of the things that we offer. If they need any post work, E&O insurance, things like that, we can, you know, help with that. But, you know, early on, HBO, Turner, CNN, before there was the merger of WarnerMedia, all of these entities had a very strong foothold in the shorts, you know, world. So we've kept that going even as we've merged. So, and we hope to continue going with that.
Great, that's wonderful. And congratulations on so many things happening with these filmmakers, which kind of gets me into a question around it's funny because it kind of works with the tracking piece, I guess. So forgive me as I put this together, is around, because I'm thinking of filmmakers watching this and wanting to work with each of you in different ways, and kind of about what that relationship is like in a lot of ways, in the sense that, and I might not want to necessarily go to this term, but thinking of it in terms of ownership, like of how there's the story and the filmmakers that are so close with that story and it's their story, or if it's a doc, even like a further removed from the ownership of that story. But then you as an are also are representing an organization that also has a story and mission and what they're kind of working towards. And I'm just curious about that synergy, like where you find like, and what that relationship kind of looks like. And also maybe there is another example, if that's the best way to go with this, as to kind of what that process looks like for a filmmaker that's like interested in working with you. Like, what would it be that I would say you're definitely, what would that look like for them in the long term? If we could dive into that a little bit more. Anyone want to start?
I can start with this. This is something I've been thinking about recently, actually. So just to give a little context, with If Then, we, provide funding and guidance. We don't own anything of the project. We typically, Caitlin Mayberg, who's our my co-director, who is a very experienced doc producer, is credited as consulting producer on the shorts, for the amount of hands-on work that she does do with the filmmakers. But at the end of the day, we try to have very transparent conversations with them about what are your goals for this film. So if you really want a certain kind of festival premiere or to be on a certain platform, we keep that in mind as we work with them on as the production progresses and we start seeing cuts. You have to keep those goals in mind about how the film looks and how it's working, because at the end of the day, it's not our film, and we want them to see us as advocates and peers and partners. We're not dictators, and it's not our film. So even though we might disagree on an aesthetic choice or something, we'll always say to them, if this is your goal, this is what we think might make sense, but at the end of the day, it's your film. So we always want the filmmakers to leave feeling like they made the film that they wanted to, with the most support that they could get for it. And it doesn't, it's, obviously, we like films going out into the world being successful because it does look good for our brand, our program. But what's most important is that the filmmakers feel happy and feel like they got to make what they wanted to make.
Yeah. Anyone else has something to add to this, kind of about that, again, relationship that you have with the filmmaker, perhaps even long term?
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in there. Our mission is kind of similarly to really empower filmmakers, and we want to do films where someone comes to us with a really strong vision and they're going to get to make the film they want to make. We need to stand behind it. It's going out on our platform, we need to be able to stand editorially behind it, but that's kind of all part of the process of choosing the right films, that we're going to go with things where a filmmaker's got something to say. And kind of longer term, I guess, those are the kind of filmmakers we want to work with, who are building a career and who are trying to build a really interesting body of work. And I guess particularly filmmakers who want to carry on making shorts. It's not I know most filmmakers want to then go and make a feature and, and that's cool. But I've increasingly sort of grown to really like working with filmmakers who only want to do shorts for the next few years. Because I think you just get a really exciting set of just an exciting body of work. And I mean, maybe I'm going off the point slightly here, but my advice to some of the short filmmakers watching this, especially if they've got into Sundance, is you don't have to just see it as a stepping stone. This could be a successful short, and then you're going to make some more really awesome shorts. The platforms and the programs that all of us are working on, it's getting your work out to really big, wide audiences, possibly more than you would get with feature docs. So sorry if that's going off the point slightly, but I just kind of wanted to riff on that, just thinking of the long-term benefits. This can really kind of launch people, I think.
No apologies in this case. Go for it, Adam.
Yeah, no, I was going to say from a programming standpoint, I got I thought this, not this question, but this one time I was approached with this question that I thought was like incredibly gross, where somebody was like, oh, I want to like talk to you, about like so and so because you're you know you're like the person that like discovered them and stuff like that. And I'm like, I just like watched their film and I liked it and like it made its way into the program. And I think that like, some of that can be in the programming world, like there's a sense of ownership around like discovering people, which I think is always like really lame, because it's like, we're not doing the heavy lifting on any of the filmmaking itself, like that's all on the artists. And I think that, I think for me, the thing, if there is any sort of like ownership, which I didn't even like using that term, is just sort of like, I think being able to like create something like a space or some sort of an opportunity for a lot of these artists, and an audience as well too, just to create that experience where it really is like them having their film on like, one of the best platforms they can possibly have it on in terms of like that sort of audience and stuff. And I think that that's the most that I think, whether you're at a festival or an organization or the Guardian or whatever, it's like, that's really like what you can do that's like the best you can do for like, these artists and stuff, is just to create that opportunity for them and like to, really sort of enhance the experience of their film that much more. I think that that's kind of it. But yeah, I always get like, I know that that question wasn't around that. I just was thinking of this one time I got asked this question where it was like, you discovered this person, like, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I hit play on like a file. Like, I don't know, like that's not ownership. I don't know what that is. So
I very much agree with you on that point. I'm sure there's many of us also nodding our heads in this room, being like that have been maybe asked a version of that question, Adam, about when it comes from programming or curating, that it's we didn't discover anything. Like I got assigned a batch of movies and that happened to be it. So, but I appreciate you kind of bringing that around, because that's true. It's like, those terms I know that they're in themselves like problematic, because it also with shorts filmmakers, also specifically, there has never been a real distribution like channel for them. So there is like an inherent like, need to, they are the champions and owners of that work as the artists. So like, what are we doing to kind of help them, I guess, was kind of what I was trying to get at, which I appreciate you bringing up that point. I'm curious, yeah, for like maybe even for Opal, coming in from an acquisition standpoint of like what that relationship looks like for you, and kind of thinking about these, outdated terms. We're moving into a space where, filmmakers are really, it feels like definitely shining more, especially on the short form.
Yeah, no, I like that that Adam underlined that shying away from that term, because it's for us, it's about just giving greater platform, blowing your trumpet, if you will. And, particularly being in the public television space, it's giving filmmakers, if they haven't worked with public broadcasters before, also that introduction. We have all of these strict standards around funding and editorial guidelines, which I'm sure is the same with Guardian, Charlie, being in a journalistic posture. But, it's that introduction, it's becoming a part of the POV family. And it's also, the work that we do, like I said before, on the impact side of things, that doesn't just end when the license expires. This is part of our ethos and our what we're doing in contributing to the documentary community. So, certainly each year that family grows with each new class of filmmakers.
Mm-hmm. Great. And Lamonia, I'm curious about your kind of thoughts around this as well, as someone that gets to work with filmmakers, again, offering them an incredible opportunity, and then what that looks like as you're, working with them within that realm, that like larger WarnerMedia space.
Well, within the larger WarnerMedia space, there's a huge comms team, so they will get press, and we have access to the deadlines, the varieties of different, press outlets that they really want, and may or may not get. Other places they can, but we certainly will make a concerted effort to get them there. We do keep our relationship with them even after, as Opal said, the license expires. On the 150 side, we also do not take any IP. So we work with them for the entire life of the entire life cycle without owning any IP until they get to the point where they're doing their development deal or whatever at one of the WarnerMedia brands. So, but we still stay involved with them. We have a whole website where we promote them. We'll promote them for the various, months that we want to promote them. And we also try to partner with any of the impact organizations, Color of Change, Black and Missing, we had a great movie that we were promoting around Veterans Day, and it actually is now nominated for a John Cassavetes Award. So we do try to make sure that we do events with them. We will do showcases. We have a new event, for lack of a better word, that we're doing at various festivals called 150 Presents, where we will bring in the artists and have an immersive experience around their project. So we try to make sure that everyone's warmed up to the project early on. And in terms of our shorts that we acquire, we try to make sure, or we do make sure, we do a really good job of making sure that they have a really good campaign around it, so that people will come to the platform and watch it and really be excited about it as we are. I hope that answered your question. I don't know if I went off the rails too. So
it's okay. We're going to take, we're going with it. Which is why I wanted to have this conversation with you five, because the next, I would say, kind of points or conversations are more, they're broad, which I think all of this conversation is, let's be honest. And this one is kind of around like industry and short films, and kind of like just bringing this up also as a way to, as those of us that are on the industry side that, do work with a lot of short filmmakers, a lot of different genres and versions and different artists, it's kind of like, it still feels, and perhaps also this is where you can jump in and be like, it doesn't, it still feels a bit disconnected from the industry to the short films space, weirdly. I don't know why. And I'm just kind of curious, like, what your thoughts are on this, and how we could perhaps envision something better. And maybe there's if you want to talk about that, or even lead it in a way of, I've actually been to certain events or spaces that have done it better, and what could it look like to replicate that, if that's a good place to start. But to me, it's a very broad conversation about how to best really connect short films and filmmakers that are watching this kind of with the industry, or vice versa. Because again, we kind of see that important connection of everyone here in this room about how much you are championing the short films. Who wants to start? It's not really a question, this is kind of a topic.
You're asking about the disconnect between industry's perspectives of shorts and the reality of shorts, or
kind of the relationship and access. Maybe that's where I'm thinking of. And who has access perhaps to those that space. But it could go that way too, Merrill, if that's something that resonates for you.
Well, I do want to second what Charlie was saying earlier about the misunderstanding of why people make shorts. The idea that filmmakers make shorts as a calling card for a feature that they want to be making, instead of it's a form that they like, or the subject matter fits the short format. And I think it's a shame when filmmakers aren't respected for wanting to continue building a shorts profile for themselves. Let me think on the rest of what you were talking about for a second.
I kind of agree with.
Go on, Adam.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I kind of agree with what Merrill was saying as well too, because I think it's interesting. I mean, I don't know how the music world is, but I can't imagine somebody approaching a musician because they like the song and they're like, hey, where's the rest of the album? You know what I mean? Like it's one of those things where I think it's just a question of just like the form. And I think that I always think, and it's maybe changed a little bit more over the years, but I think that if it's not the calling card type thing, it's more kind of like, sometimes the industry folks will like tap into it to see if there's like, I don't know, if they can see sort of the flavor of the filmmaker and how that might, transfer to something else. But I think in in general, though, too, I do think that there hasn't really been a space within the industry outside of like, more online kind of, I don't know if I'd say like content for lack of a better word, but more like kind of like web series type things or that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's sort of like, I don't totally know what the answer is to be honest. I think it's more just sort of like, to a certain extent, the appreciation of the form is something that's very sort of insular to the film world in and of itself. And I think, once you kind of get into the industry bubble, it's sort of one of those things where it's like the idea of like how to sort of like monetize something like that, and it doesn't totally click like why somebody would want to make like 1/6 of a film versus like just keeping it for what it is and stuff. And I think that it's and sometimes they do want to expand that short into a feature, which is totally cool too and stuff. But I think it's a short for the sake of it being a short. Yeah, it's a bit of like a gray space, I think, in general, like with the industry. I think if they're not, it's almost kind of one of those things where it's like, well, if you're not looking to expand this, then like what else do you want to do to a certain extent? And so that's the way that I sort of see, that's the way that I've seen people sort of on the more like bigger industry side, how it sort of works a little bit more.
I would, to Adam's point, I did work in the music industry for a very long time. So I can tell you that if we did hear someone with a song, we definitely wanted to know where was the album. But to your point, if you think of an album as 10 songs and you juxtapose it against a filmmaker, that's like 10 shorts, right? So they're telling a whole story with 10 shorts, which is 10 songs. I think in the industry, people are learning that you can watch a person's short and that same person who wrote a great short could also be in a writer's room writing great episodics, right? Which are little shorts. I think if you can direct a great short, you can direct a great episodic. So I think that is happening a little more in the industry where people are looking at the style of your short and reading the credits of who has created this great short. And some of those people are hopefully getting, other work that pays them, that allows them to then continue making shorts. So if it's not happening, hopefully somebody's watching this and says, hey, that's a great idea, let's do that. But, I think that is a way that the industry can connect more with short filmmakers without trying to change them into, to your point earlier, Charlie, into feature filmmakers or, feature documentarians. I think that there is a world for short films, and I hope that the industry is going to connect the dots in that way, if they're not already doing it.
Go for it, Charlie.
Yeah. I think it's a shame that like at festivals and markets, the shorts programs are kind of seen, like very much seen as the poor relation. So they often won't be promoted by festivals. Often the festivals won't pay for the filmmakers to come. And then when the filmmakers come, I've often sort of found that like they're not given anything to do. Like the feature doc makers are really looked after. The shorts ones are kind of left to flounder a little bit. I think Sundance is really good for looking after its short filmmakers, by the way. I'm not just saying that, it's really good. But I think like, I look at something like Doc Leipzig, they have a shorts pitch and they kind of try and create some events for short filmmakers to meet with people like us. You don't get that at many other events. And I kind of think that's a shame for people who are coming to these events, whether they've got a short in the program or whether they're just coming to want to like pitch a short to someone like me. Those spaces don't exist in the way that I think they should. And I kind of feel like I've been saying this for a few years and maybe I've not been saying it to the right people, but it doesn't really feel like that changes. And I think that's why often like filmmakers making shorts feel like they need to come to the event and then say, oh, let me talk to you about my feature rather than this short that I really want to make, because the spaces just aren't there to pitch the shorts to people, or even just kind of tell festival goers, hey, you might want to come and see my short. Like, yeah, it's just that thing of being like a sort of lesser relation, I think is a real shame.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think when the motivation is just about market or about business concerns, that can often be the case, or popularity concerns, then But when you're actually wanting to support the art for the art of it, for the expression of it, for the breadth of coverage, particularly in the nonfiction space, I think, there's been perhaps a lot more opportunity through streaming. But if you're an animated shorts maker or a narrative shorts maker, there just hasn't been those many platforms seeking to support you just for the art of it. And so you're relegated to those narrow areas where industry has decided, oh, we want to, do this. I think Focus Features or Fox Searchlight, one of the big studios, had been funding some narrative short form work. So yeah, I think, I'm not really sure what the answer is to in those spaces where the opportunities are much less. Have there be this wanting to appreciate the art of it. On the nonfiction side, I think what you're seeing is documentary shorts can be quite nimble and responsive to, news and stories that you wouldn't be able to respond to in the same way with a feature form. Like, what was the nominated short a couple of years ago, Merrill, Field of Vision in Korea, in South Korea, in Hong Kong, with all of the invasion that was going on. Anders.
Yeah, it's
Do Not Split.
Do Not Split.
Yes, sorry, I wasn't working at the time. Thank you.
No, I'm sorry, I'm giving you a pop quiz there, but the access and the nimbleness that he was able to do with that filmmaking, and I thought, man, like he was able to get in there and capture so much story, and the fact that it was a short, I think, made it all that much more impactful. So I think the nonfiction space, because of that responsiveness and the Field of Vision, has been doing brilliant work with that, with this real eye towards authorship, which I love. You've been having those opportunities for documentary filmmakers, but to your point, Amanda, for the larger short form, I think there's definitely been that disconnect, and it does not afford other expressiveness in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I'll also add to that too, really quick, which I always kind of think of a lot. I've had this discussion recently with some friends and stuff, but I think like one of the things, like in particular with festivals or even sort of like the shorts world, is that I don't think it's something that's sort of like intentionally there with like guardrails or anything, but like I always think that there is definitely a community that sort of forms by a lot of those filmmakers and stuff. I think with them sort of being in different festivals and stuff like that, and also like knowing each other. And I think it's both kind of a regional thing, I think, to a certain extent, but also like I do see it a lot more maybe in the festival world, because people are kind of like traveling the circuit throughout the year, and they kind of like, they'll see people again and stuff. You kind of know people's reputation from that, and it kind of goes from there. But I think it's it's been really interesting too, because I think there have been some filmmakers that have had that level of success as well too, that have kind of been doing things for like the sake of like the art of it and stuff, and it's turned into something that's like been like pretty awesome. Like I think the one name, not to kind of keep calling on Field of Vision all the time with this, but they have a really strong track record. But like somebody like Garrett Bradley, like I remember like years ago when she was working on some of her early shorts and stuff like that, and kind of like seeing that journey to time where I think the Criterion version just came out a couple weeks ago or whatever, which is like, it's been incredible too. And it's like it's great seeing like those types of artists just like making shorts because they want to make shorts, and then it kind of like turns into something else. And so I think there is kind of like an added component to that too, where I think there's like this community of people that are kind of making things, and it's more kind of like the opposite of kind of the like, don't call us, we'll call you type of thing. It's like more on the filmmaker side to a certain extent, where it's like when they're ready, then they do move to like a different form. So yeah.
There's so much to think about, and just all of your responses, and kind of one of the things maybe to leave us with, I know in our last minutes kind of feels really big, because to me it does get into that disconnect of where there's so much work being made, and then there's kind of the term short film is like, it's over the years has meant many different things in terms of its definition, but like really feels strangely like co-opted right now, like in the sense of where, and I maybe will bring up like Taylor Swift's music video, short film by Taylor Swift, or like YouTube, announcing $100 million to creators to make shorts, like that's how they said it, but it's really 60-second videos made for a TikTok format. And so that, to me, that's really interesting because it feels like this injection of like money and attention from like a larger general public to watch short films. But that definition means maybe something different to us in the industry, or Adam, to your point of like what that means in terms of the artists that are circulating within that space that are creating kind of their own like collective language around it and experience. So it's really broad. Like, what does that term mean to you today as we are, and like kind of like, what are your thoughts on it is where we're going?
I just want to start off by saying Charlotte, Field Division, and I were actually just having this conversation about how we feel like due to TikTok and a certain age group are being so used to watching 60-second plus videos, they're much more primed for like understanding and seeking out short video content, short films, hopefully. But also there's the disconnect of, and I think this is, we didn't even have time to get into this, but the fees that are being offered to short filmmakers right now is being kind of warped by the mindset of some sort of like online spaces of what online video is and is worth. And so you end up with these like lower fees being offered because of this kind of like fusion of online video and short films being pushed together. So I'm hopeful that we're moving towards some solution for that. I don't know what it is yet, but
well, we just have to keep having those conversations about it. So I think that's kind of perfect. Like that's kind of the inquiry that I was bringing up, right, around the term short film. Where does that land for you today? Given, I think, Merrill, to your point, you and Charlotte having that conversation. I know myself and fellow colleagues are also having like similar conversations when the medium is rapidly, or the access to that medium is rapidly changing, and audiences are willing to watch a lot, and on devices that kind of sometimes suit the short film, in ways that a feature film not so much. So I'm curious, any other thoughts on this as we kind of wrap it up? I know, very big.
I'll jump in real quick. Yeah, no, I mean, I always think like, I think I've thought about this some too. And I mean, I always sort of take the long historical view too, where I'm like, the first films made were shorts. And I think, and then it became, the format, the medium's always the same. It's just the format that sort of changes and kind of keeps breaking up and then like morphing and, merging with different things. And I think similar to like what Merrill was saying as well too, I mean, I have a four-year-old who very regularly and like binges on like YouTube videos, just goes down these like recommendation like rabbit holes and stuff. And it's like, it's crazy to, I mean, it's like, it's really exciting to see, I think, to a certain extent, because it's like I'm watching somebody develop and like watch things in a way where it's like, it's indicative of like what, like, I don't even think they're registered as like a generation yet, but it's like that the way that they're watching stuff is going to be like shaping, how a lot of this stuff gets made in the future. And so I think it's interesting to see it like that, where there's still the same amount of like attention that's given to maybe not just like the overall piece itself, but like in terms of like how much they absorb. So it's like, I mean, if you wanted to, you could like leave them there for an hour, 2 hours, and they could just watch all of that and stuff. And I don't know if it's so much the duration as it is just sort of like the way that the information gets to them, or that experience where it's a bit more kind of in shorter blocks and stuff. So it's interesting to see that. And again, to sort of just from a format standpoint, where it's like, my own preference is to see things on like a giant screen and stuff, and to be sort of engulfed and enveloped in that experience. But, I can tell you just the same thing too. I mean, my 4-year-old, the way that she watches something on an iPhone is probably more intense than my experience of like watching something on a screen in terms of like how hard it is to get her attention when she's like locked into something. And so I think it's, I think it's always one of those things too, where I think just the medium in and of itself, it's always defined by, each respective generation and kind of what they've done with it. And I think that we have our own preference. And I think that, it's going to keep changing hands and stuff. And I think that, it's just one of those things you kind of have to like let the medium and the form do what it does. And you got to just keep up with it and stuff. I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong answer to it. So.
Yeah. Is it sparking any thoughts for anyone else?
No, because I've thought about this. Like, for instance, in my curation days, we would get episodics submitted, and I'd be with my associate programmers like, it's nice, but is it a short? And it's like, well, what are you looking at it thinking? Well, does it stand on its own, or is it making me feel like, oh, I missed something, or I'm waiting to get something else? Like, does it feel like a fraction of a larger story, or so at least in that context, yeah, there are certain things I guess you're looking for as like tent poles of the form. But then I think about like, AR and VR, and the fact that I don't think anybody thinks of those as short films necessarily, but they certainly are. It's a completely new grammar of filmmaking. But yeah, I think to Adam's point, you want to stay open around it and allow it to be creatively driven, or creatively have any boundaries that are placed on it be done through creativeness and not through any sort of ideas about what should and shouldn't be. But yeah, it's an interesting question, Amanda. I like to grapple with this one.
Sorry. Any other thoughts on this?
Just quickly, like, I guess because my role at The Guardian has kind of come to encompass like news video and all of our social video, and I've been in charge of our TikTok channel and our Instagram channel, which has meant I've had to learn a lot of that. Like, I've sort of gained like a lot of respect for what's made on there and for that audience. I think it's super different to what we're doing in the documentary space. And they're kind of, they're a long way from each other creatively, but I don't think that, I sort of argue against the idea that like, there's this audience of like 18-year-olds and all they're watching is TikTok. Like, that audience is super intelligent and they're watching short documentaries as well. It's just that often the media isn't interested in talking about that. They just want to kind of go down this simple narrative of like, all they're doing is TikTok. TikTok's suddenly this like super powerful force. And to kind of, I guess, in like to build on what Adam was saying, like often history is written as if like things move in these epochs where like there's one format and then there's another format. But I just think things are way more fluid than that. And we've got the audience that we're getting stuff out to online is just so media literate and so intelligent, and like way more intelligent and sort of skeptical and engaged than I was when I was 18 or whatever. And I just think we should be really excited by that. And the kind of all these porous boundaries, I think, are really creatively interesting.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Lamonia, do you have anything to add?
Oh, I'm also grappling with this very deep question, Amanda, but to everyone else's point, I do, when I'm looking at shorts, I do, of course, look to see what Opal called the tent poles. Are they there? Is it a great story? I don't think it should be. I think the good thing about short filmmakers, they don't have to be put in a box. They can go ahead and make that story. I don't like to put time limits on it or anything like that. I've seen recently some of the best short films I've seen have been silent and just amazing and pull on you so hard, and been animated and pull on you so hard, or, so I think that they are maybe the last form of the, losing power. Maybe the last form of our medium that doesn't have to have that box around it. And I think that's exciting.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna have to wrap this up, but I feel like I said, this dinner party conversation could have gone along for way longer. But a part of the reason I wanted to ask that question beyond it kind of admiring everything that you are all doing is really for, I think, anyone listening to this panel to see how thoughtful and careful and understanding you are of the form, to your point, like that it is a creative medium that's ever changing. And you know, that to me is actually very exciting versus any of us like knowing exactly what we're doing. We're approaching it with curiosity on behalf of the artists. And I think that's really important, especially as the makers are going to continue to push the form, to your point. So with that, thank you so much for your time and for joining me today in a conversation around short films and filmmaking and what you're doing within this space. It's been such a delight to have you.